just pivoting back to Synod Assembly, I'll be packing up this evening as well, and the group of four of us from Grace here are leaving mid-morning tomorrow to head over to Greensboro to try to get as registered and in as we can before worship starts. That being said, I'm waiting for Eric to log in from home. He's going to be showing the episode through his computer, and after
Uh,
we start with our opening dialogue here, we'll rely on him for the video, and then there's usually a little follow-up conversation, which is fine. And then, but I've previewed the first half of the episode, so I think we'll shoot for one half of this episode and then the second half. The fifth season of The Chosen is scheduled to come out in chunks, and on June 15th, the first two episodes are supposed to drop. So we might be looking at the next couple of weeks as transition from The Chosen maybe into something else for a bit, or maybe we could just talk about what we've seen so far and not have a viewing for 1, maybe 2 weeks.
Are
But
we almost done with section 4?
yeah, we're on the last episode
Oh,
today,
okay.
so that's why I thought maybe half and half. It's not particularly long, but I mean, not that I saw actually. Oh, there's Eric. Hello. And then we would maybe transition to something short, maybe even have, some kind of a little movie party, even if it's remote, and check out something that's not a full show, and then pivot back into The Chosen once the first few episodes are available. Their timing, of course, probably will outpace ours since we're meeting once a week, and sometimes we get through a full episode, but more likely we get through half of an episode in a week. So, however that rolls out is fine. I know that Eric had a couple of ideas through is it Open Bible, Eric? Turning our attention to The Chosen, I think we had said we are on the final episode that's available to us right now, which is season 4, episode 9. In the previous episode, we got to see the raising of Lazarus from the dead. A lot of conflicting emotions about that. Judas is over the moon that finally people will take this seriously and the uprising must be close at hand. Thomas, very conflicted about why not Rama, why Lazarus. Jesus has told Lazarus that it was more the timing, which I think is actually kind of funny. It wasn't you, it was mostly the timing that it kind of positioned him right outside of Jerusalem and getting ready for the triumphal entry into Jerusalem. A little bit of a wink and a nudge there, but there are lots of relationships and a lot of identity at stake here, and everybody's coming at this from a very different perspective. We should mention probably that Judas isn't alone in his hope that this Jesus is the Messiah and that that will lead to an overthrow of their Roman oppressors. That has been a long held belief in ancient Israel and was promised by the prophets, and so rests in a biblical faith that God's word will come true in this very specific way. And
you don't need.
I have a feeling we'll continue to ramp up because the triumphal entry looks an awful lot like a political victory and probably hastened the death of Jesus by quite a bit. We also remember, speaking of scars and bumps and bruises, that Lazarus's knee still clicks. Being an Easter person, a resurrection person, means that we still carry our scars and that they're part of the plan of God for not making all new things, but making all things new. And so yeah, a lot going on, a lot at play. And if we make it through the entire episode, that's fine. like I said, once we start sharing screen and viewing at least the first part of the episode, I'll have to bug out and get ready for Synod Assembly. But um, this coming episode holds a lot of promise, and we know that we are really at the threshold of the last days of Jesus. Not, I don't think, spoiling anything. You could open to John and find out that right after raising Lazarus, Jesus rides on into Jerusalem, but then has a very long dialogue at what we would call the Last Supper with the disciples, including the foot washing and all the things that we're reading on Sunday morning right now, including this coming Sunday, come from that dialogue. Jesus' prayer for the disciples and instructions and promise of the advocate, the Holy Spirit, and a bunch of other things. So we certainly have a lot to look forward to thematically in this chosen series. Are there any lingering thoughts from our previous episode or anything that came before we launch into episode 9?
I have a question. How is it that, I don't really recall, what was the reason for Jesus's triumphant entry into Jerusalem? Just the fact that he was arriving there? No, nobody knows of his upcoming crucifixion and death, other than the disciples kind of sort of knowing that. But was this something that was prophesied, that he would come into Jerusalem triumphantly?
Yeah, it's a good, very good question. It definitely satisfies the look that those more traditional believers of the Messiah might imagine him to look like. A political and military victory would very much be a part of his being the true Messiah. And so it kind of depends on how you look at it, I think. I don't, there's no direct prophecy about, well, you know, they do quote an ancient prophet about you will see him riding on a donkey, but maybe not specifically about riding as looking like a king, riding into Jerusalem in victory. That was very much a thing that Caesar would do. And probably Herod liked to play at that, even though he was still subservient to Rome. This is Herod the Great's son. Sons would probably like to do things like that. But we have seen in very recent episodes, including the last one, more poignant prophecy, especially from the later sections of Isaiah about the suffering servant. So as Jesus has foretold his own suffering, it feels like he's really preparing people to see him as the suffering servant rather than the military powerhouse that they might be hoping for. I don't think that it's registered with anyone yet, even though he has said plainly to the disciples, the Son of Man must be lifted up, must undergo great suffering, die, and rise again, which are both passion and resurrection predictions. I don't think it's really registered at a deeper level with anybody that that this is going to end in a prisoner's death for Jesus. The triumphal entry, if anything, probably leads them more into thinking, here we go. And again, like Judas, the uprising is at hand. But obviously that will change very quickly. You can tell, though, the nice thing about seeing it in color on The Chosen is that just in the looks that people are giving, both of bewilderment but also concern, some of the things that he's saying are pointing in that direction. And I think it'll be very interesting to see what that shift is like for the disciples in The Chosen. We know in the text that it doesn't go over well. they they never do quite get it until they've put their hands in the marks on his hand and side. But yeah, so I hope that started to answer your question. There's no specific prophecy about a triumphal entry into Jerusalem, but I guess if you put a bunch of pieces together, it would fit with the Messiah look.
Could I add something?
Yeah.
So I think that right at the moment he's riding high with the crowds because he's done all these miracles and they see him as, a great miracle worker. And so they're not really sensing the undertones of the authorities yet. But also the scene really does parallel. Ben touched on it, but Caesar coming in a victorious way, riding on a steed, and people would be singing Hosanna, which is save us, and putting palm branches, and it has all of the marks of the glorious victor coming into town, and he's riding on a donkey. And it's meant, I think, to give a contrast also to what would be expected at the time politically or from someone in power, because it's like that, but also there's a real distinct difference because of what will be happening to Jesus and his humility. He won't be wearing that laurel crown of gold leaves. He'll be wearing a crown of thorns. And so I think that we see that theme getting played out also throughout the Passion.
Yeah, now to talk a little bit more to what I thought was part of Christine's question is what is pushing and making this happen? Besides it being foretold and following in some ways, I think that Jesus is the person that's making the decisions, that's taking them back to Jerusalem at this time, wanting to raise them from the dead at this point in time, and to create what the Father is asking him to do.
Yeah, and it's all very careful and dedicated timing. I think Jesus's nod to the timing of the raising of Lazarus talked about that. It's really hard to communicate that, I think, but the gospel tells a story that's very deliberate. And I don't recall if these words were said in The Chosen, but at some point along the road in the gospels, we hear that he sets his face to Jerusalem. And it's like nothing is going to deter him from getting to Jerusalem, where he knows that they want to kill him, and going through with that. It is very politically interesting how the scene plays out. If you've been to Jerusalem, and you can picture this, what we now call the Palm Sunday road down from the Mount of Olives to the steps of the main city, it's not really the main route. Like Caesar would have come in on a white horse or a chariot with the full band and soldiers and the whole thing, and was, as was just mentioned, Jesus comes in on a donkey, and people are throwing their coats on the donkey. There's no saddle or any distinguishing marks. And so it's almost like a mock-up. And I've preached before here at Grace about the difference between a triumph and a parade. And Caesar would ride into town in triumph, and it would be to mark a military victory or a newly overtaken capital or something. And so Jesus kind of mimics that on the Palm Sunday road, but then he's led out of the city in much more of what was known as a parade. And that is, after the triumph goes through town, then comes the prisoners of war, the generals of the other side, whoever that might be, and they're spit at and made fun of, and things are thrown at them, and they're humiliated. And so what we see kind of on mirror images of Jesus is that what looks like a triumphal a triumph and then crossing over into a parade. And to me, it speaks to the radical love that, could Jesus have called down legions of angels? Yes, but he chose the way of humility, servanthood, and suffering. There's great power in that we can go into, but there's a lot of intentionality in the way his story is played out and then how it's told. And I think that it's kind of two sides of the mirror that way.
Well, thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah, yeah. All right, Eric, if you wouldn't mind, do I need to do anything on this end to help you to share?
No, I think I should have it. Did we want to go through any of the Bible verses first?
Oh,
Does anybody have a Bible?
I
Yep.
do, but I don't have any glasses.
Okay.
you're fine, Barbara. We got
I
you.
was gonna say this one time we'll do it for you,
Thanks.
but it has nothing to do with anything else going on. No, I'm just teasing. But no, we can definitely cover for you this time.
Yeah,
So the first one
on the door.
is John chapter 12 verses 1 through 8.
Okay. John 12, 1 through 8.
Yep. And then the next one is Exodus chapter 12 verses 1 through 14.
I'll get that one. Exodus 12.
Yep, 1 through 14. And then we'll flip back to Matthew, which is going to be very similar to the John, but it's chapter 26 verses 2 through 13.
I got that.
Okay. Why don't we go ahead and start with John?
All right. Mary anointed you. 6 days before Passover, Jesus came to Bethany, the home of Lazarus, whom he had raised from the dead. There they gave a dinner for him. Martha served, and Lazarus was one of those at the table with him. Mary took a pound of costly perfume made from pure nard, anointed Jesus' feet, and wiped them with her hair. The house was filled with the fragrance of the perfume. But Judas Iscariot, one of the disciples, the one who was about to betray him, said, "Why was this perfume not sold for 300 denarii and the money given to the poor?" He said this not because he cared about the poor, but because he was a thief. He kept the common purse and used it to steal what was put into it. Jesus said, "Leave her alone. She bought it so that she might keep it for the day of my burial. You always have the poor with you, but you will not always have me."
All right. Who had Exodus? Was that you, Pete?
It's Exodus 12, right?
Yep, 1 through 14.
All right. The Lord said to Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt, "This month shall be to you the beginning of months, the first month of the year to you. Tell all the congregation of Israel, on the 10th day of this month, they shall take every man a lamb or a kid, according to the size of the family of which he is the father, a lamb or kid for each house. And if the household is too small to consume the lamb, let him and his next door neighbor take it according to the number of persons. Each man according to what each can eat shall make your count for the lamb. Your lamb or kid shall be without blemish, a male of the first year. You shall take it from the sheep or the goats. And you shall keep it until the 14th day of the same month, and the whole assembly of the congregation of Israel shall each kill his lamb in the evening. They shall take of the blood and put it on the two side posts and on the lintel above the door space of the houses in which they shall eat the Passover lamb. They shall eat the flesh that night roasted with unleavened bread and bitter herbs. They shall eat it. Eat not of the raw or boiled at all. 7 days you shall eat unleavened bread, and the seventh day you shall be a feast to the Lord. Unleavened bread shall be eaten for 7 days. No leavened bread shall be seen in you, neither shall there shall be any leaven in all your territory. You shall explain to your son on that day, this is done because of what the Lord did to me when I came out of Egypt. There shall be a sign to you upon your hand, and as a memorial between your eyes, that the law of the Lord may be in your mouth. For with a strong hand the Lord has brought you out of Egypt. You shall therefore keep this ordinance at this time from year to year. And when the Lord brings you into the land of the Canaanites, as he promised and swore to you and your fathers, and shall give it to you, you shall set it apart to the Lord, all that first opens the womb. All the firstlings of your livestock that are males shall be the Lord's. Each firstborn of a donkey you shall redeem it by substituting it for a lamb, or you shall not redeem it. Then you shall break its neck, and every firstborn among your sons, shall you redeem. And when in time to come, your son asks, what does this mean? You shall say to him, by the strength of hand, the Lord brought us out of Egypt, from the house of bondage and bondsmen. You said through 18?
No, 14.
14. Okay, that was 14.
Good, we're good. Excellent, thank you.
Kind of-
And the last one was Matthew 26, 2-13.
Yeah, and always good to have that reminder of what is meant when we see that word Passover. This is a very important, hugely culturally significant event that takes place yearly. But I'm going to start at 1 just because it makes more sense, I think. When Jesus had finished saying these things, he said to his disciples, you know that after 2 days the Passover is coming, and the Son of Man will be handed over to be crucified. Then the chief priests and the elders of the people gathered in the palace of the high priest, who was called Caiaphas, and they conspired to arrest Jesus by stealth and kill him. But they said, not during the festival, or there may be a riot among the people. Now when Jesus was at Bethany, in the house of Simon the leper, a woman came to him with an alabaster jar of very costly ointment, and she poured it on his head as he sat at the table. But when the disciples saw it, they were angry and said, why this waste? For this ointment could have been sold for a large sum, and the money given to the poor. But Jesus, aware of this, said to them, why do you trouble the woman? She has performed a good service for me. For you always have the poor with you, but you will not always have me. By pouring this ointment on my body, she has prepared me for burial. Truly I tell you, wherever this good news is proclaimed in the whole world, what she has done will be told in remembrance of her. And it's just funny, now I cannot picture these words without picturing Matthew standing there and kind of like writing it down as it happens.
Yes. But that account said that they said, why was this done? And the previous one said, Judas said it. Did I get that right?
Absolutely, you did, yeah. And it's not Mary in this case. It's not Mary of Bethany in this case. It's just a woman, and it's not 6 days before the Passover. It's 2 days, but yeah, very very similar stories. John maybe likes to put a little bit more symbolic and make sure that certain names are in place for symbolic reasons.
John's not a big fan of Judas, if you haven't figured that out.
Pretty precise instructions.
Really, parentheses, the one who would betray him.
That's right, the thief.
Yeah, nobody else ever mentions that Judas was a thief or whatever. And also the other gospels are pretty clear about Judas's repentance afterward and how horrible he felt about it. John didn't have any time up for that. I wonder if we watch closely. I've been kind of keeping an eye out to see, because they're assuming that the disciple named John wrote the Gospel of John, which I don't think it's historically accurate, but whatever. And I was wondering if maybe like Judas is going to steal his girlfriend or something, because yeah, he is painted in a particularly harsh light in the fourth gospel.
All right, so let me see if I can share this thing, and just give me a thumbs up if that you can hear it. I always get nervous about the sound part. All right. So there's only about maybe 28 minutes left of this episode. So I probably should have stopped it a little bit sooner, but I figured it's better to leave it right on the cliffhanger.
Ah,
Well, it works at the edge of night on Fridays every week.
All right, so we've got a few more minutes. So what do you think? What do you think so far? So I missed a little bit at the beginning. I'm assuming that was King David.
Yes.
That
Okay.
looked like the same character from early, yeah, except he had a beard, right? Anyway, yeah, King David.
Okay. So we had the triumphal entry into the earlier Jerusalem.
Through the city streets and with fanfare, still doing those two things, throwing their coats down and waving the branches.
and saying Hosanna.
Okay.
David, I didn't get a full explanation for the bridle, but the bridle is going to show up at an important time in the remainder of this.
That is entirely possible. I'm not sure how how season 5 kicks it all off, but you could very well be right.
It's in
It's in this
it's in this episode. You'll see that the bridal has something to do with it.
Spoiler alert.
I know.
Did it
Hey,
I
watch
help?
a
didn't
little
give it
further than
away this
Pastor Ben did.
time.
What's that?
I didn't give it away this time.
It's nothing's been given away.
I'm just
Right.
saying,
Pay attention.
to the bridle.
Yeah.
Did it help to show the two triumphal entries?
I think it was a good juxtaposition for sure.
Yeah.
The expectations of humankind versus the intention of Jesus.
Did you catch the faces around the table? After Mary anointed him and he said that you won't have me with you always, and etc. And how everyone looked at each other as if not quite grasping it, but it's there and it's churning, and you can almost see their thoughts.
You can see,
Yeah.
you can see that Shamil has almost got it. He just can't give up. He just can't give up tradition.
But he was so offended by it. I was kind of surprised by that.
Well, wealth being so core to the way he lives, was raised, and the rest of it, and only spending money where it's the right place to spend it, you can kind of see how it's offensive to him.
Yeah, but I kind of thought he'd fall the other way.
We
We hope.
We
I
We
was
hope.
hoping, maybe
Yeah.
optimist.
Well, I think the interesting thing that I really enjoy seeing, because it's so hard to actually understand it when you're trying to read and, pick out some of the cultural things. But I think it's so interesting to see Jesus point out the traditions.
Mhm.
The fact that nowhere in scripture is that written. It's one of the 630 some laws that, have been developed over the years by, the chief priests and the Pharisees. He says nowhere in there does it say that a woman has to have her head covered.
Right.
And I also picked up on that, Eric, from the standpoint of, she walks into the room and her sister goes, "What?" And all she's doing is sobbing. And she doesn't excuse herself. She does not say a word. It's all her actions, in front of this room of men, for them to condemn her or not, after
Body
we
language.
saw what she had actually done to get the very finest. Yeah.
Well, of course,
that-
that scene where she buys it is not scripture. It's good drama.
Yeah, it was an interesting interchange and really drove home the point that this was expensive stuff.
Take the year
really-
off.
For that point in history, where would she have gotten all of that money? Women didn't work then to earn
Well,
wages.
Lazarus is her brother, right?
Right.
And
She
you
took it.
saw their house, so obviously there's resources there.
She took it from the safe.
Right, in the previous episode, at the end of it, she goes to the family safe and takes out the money.
Okay. I missed it.
I missed that episode, but I
That's
did.
what you got.
They lived in.
Yeah, they were a very wealthy family.
The accountant or lawyer or whatever who was in charge of the estate and Lazarus affairs explained to the two sisters that they would be well taken care of, and he gave her the key in the event that she might need some resources from the safe that was in the house in the meantime.
And he
Because
probably
they were
didn't
gonna
realize
be
she was going to
left.
make that big of a withdrawal.
Gave her an idea.
But at the same time, if they lived on that estate and they had 50 or 100 guys working to create that wealth, it was only one man's wages for a year.
Yeah.
But she was so powerful in that scene though, because she was just so focused on Jesus and her intent
Mm-hmm.
that I wonder if she even heard all that, because it was very for me to just hear when she was doing this beautiful act and they were all and I would have been complaining too, don't get me wrong, but but that was just so distracting to have them all talking about this, and she just I wonder if she even heard them.
I don't think, this portrayed her as hearing anything. She was doing and she was grieving, and he said, she does this before I die. So
Uh,
what a gift it was to him that she had done.
Yeah, she has been paying attention.
I
The
think
rest of them have not, because this is not the first time Jesus
Yeah.
says I'm going to, meet my death.
And he does commend her from the very beginning with her sister Martha complaining that she's not helping, and he says she's chosen the better thing. She is listening, and it just seems like out of everybody, she's getting it.
Yeah.
think it's interesting that they're showing the women like Mary and Mary Magdalene are the ones who get it first. And they try to tell the men, but the men are slow to get it.
Aren't we liberated women so focused in on that?
I think
Man
we're
speak,
called
they say, right? But
bold.
we have woman speak. Nobody listens.
Troubleshooting.
Mansplaining, just
I think it's a frequency issue. I don't hear quite as well.
But quite honestly, that's not a bad way to describe it. We operate on different frequencies. Venus and Mars, that.
That has been a millennial old explanation for sure.
But we old gals aren't giving it up.
Been a long, hard battle, let me tell you.
So kind of backing up just a little bit that I thought was interesting, and I missed the prior episode with the Sanhedrin Council and all that good stuff. But I thought it was kind of interesting where, Caiaphas kind of finally said, came forward and said, okay, this is it. I had a prophecy, and I saw one man had to die for the rest of the nation. And you just kind of wonder, but really, did you really have that prophecy?
Pretty Trumpian.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah.
And if he's wrong, it's Rome's fault, so it's okay.
Oh yeah, and then he can tell the people who were all so close to understanding what Jesus was doing. No, the Romans took it from us.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I can see him right now standing before, Peter's throne there and saying, hey, honest, I really, it was the Romans' fault. It wasn't me.
Thinking back to what Ben said about, the different gospel interpretations, it seemed like they kind of blended together here, both John and Matthew's telling of these stories, because definitely the speech that he gave about doing this for the least of these, that's out of Matthew. And then using Mary as the central figure, but then he also used the terms from Matthew that this would be remembered and told about her throughout the ages. And so they blended that all. And I didn't hear, maybe I missed it, but I didn't hear anything about this whole I and the Father are one, and the Father and I are one, and we're all one in each other, and you're one in us, and everybody's one. And that's what we're preaching about now. I preached on the other lesson.
So
Anyway.
actually, I kind of messed up because I should have actually had Pastor Ben start with the sheep and the goats parable, which is about 25, like verse 25 through 40 or something in Matthew, the chapter right before he got into. I should have had him read that. I forgot about.
Well, we know
they
that
got into
one.
the parables. But I think everybody was anxious and itching to get started on the video, so we got going.
But
It was all good.
know this, and I don't know who else, but I know Lynn does, but when we started our first Peace and Justice Committee at Grace, it was called Sheep and Goats.
Yep.
I remember.
That was the name of the committee. It wasn't invite, it wasn't whatever. It was Sheep and Goats, and everybody would go, what? And they, well, look at Matthew and read it and see what we're talking about. I mean, it was just so in your face biblical kind of stuff.
Clever.
Yeah.
Thanks for
So
that
it
reminder,
is-
Barb. I forgot that.
Yeah, so it's the share team now,
Right.
but close.
And
Right.
share, pretty modern, single word.
The marketing.
But it needs to be spelled
That's right. That's right.
different.
So anyway, it is 7:30 now. I can leave everything on if you guys want to continue to chat, but I'm gonna get in trouble because I'm running a little late for choir.
Okay.
Thanks
I've
for,
got many things to do, but thank you all.